Hey guys, I just want to say that if you're new to the channel, please do consider subscribing. I'm a small content creator and could really use your support. I live stream 100% of the gameplay for games that I review, and I'm also always trying to keep up with the big named movies that are being released. If you would like to support the channel monetarily, you can do so through PayPal, or even better yet, you can get yourself some merch from my Teespring store. If you want to get better connected, you can do so through the social links in the description below, and please do consider joining the Discord. If you do, you can voice chat with me through my headphones while I live stream, and you won't be recorded on YouTube or Twitch. That's all I've got, guys. I hope that you really enjoy the video. Hello everyone, and welcome. So, they've done it again. They've made another MCU series for Disney+. That's right. I'm Mike, and this is Mike's After Action Reviews, and today we're doing the After Action review for Hawkeye. So, as always guys, I have my notes and we are going to start with the series' production. There are two production companies for the series. Disney, which is most well known for Enchanto, which was released just a little while ago in 2021, and they most recently did Diary of a Wimpy Kid, which was also released in 2021. Then we have Marvel Studios, most well known for Spider-Man No Way Home, which was released in 2021, and then they most recently released Eternals, which was also released in 2021. So, 2021 was a big year for Marvel and Disney. The series had many writers, but the two top billed writers were Jonathan Igla, which was also the head writer, who is most well known for his writing for the series Mad Men from 2010 to 2015, and also he most recently did writing for a series called Sorry for Your Loss in 2018. We have Katrina Matthewson, who is a newer writer. She is the executive story editor. She is newer to the industry and does not have very many writing credits under her belt, but she is most well known for writing for the series Pitch in 2016, and also writing for the movie Christmas Ever After in 2020. There are three directors for this show. The directorial duo Bert and Bertie. Amber Finlayson is known as Bert. She is most well known for directing Troop Zero in 2019, and also was a director on the show The Great in 2020. Katie Elwood, Bertie, she was a director on the series The Great from 2020 as well. Then you have Rhys Thompson, most well known for directing John Mulaney, The Comeback Kid in 2015, and Chad in 2021. So, this show has 6 episodes ranging from 41 to 62 minutes apiece, with a total runtime of 294 minutes. The IMDb plot synopsis is as follows. Former Avenger Clint Barton has a seemingly simple mission. Get back to his family for Christmas. Possible? Maybe with the help of Kate Bishop, a 22-year-old archer with dreams of becoming a superhero. The two are forced to work together when a presence from Barton's past threatens to derail far more than the festive spirit. I think that this plot synopsis kind of frames the story in a little bit of a goofy way, because it says like, oh, maybe with Kate Bishop's help Hawkeye can get home. It should probably say Hawkeye may not get home because of the things that Kate Bishop did, which he then has to get involved with, because everything that happens that makes this whole story happen comes from things that Kate Bishop did and things that happen with her that Hawkeye then has to kind of intervene in. It all centers around a robbery and a murder, which basically have their two separate storylines. So basically there is a Christmas party going on and Kate Bishop and her family go to this party. It has, very wealthy, affluent people, and in the basement of the party is an illegal underground auction of, very expensive kind of black market things. Nothing particularly dangerous, just all, stolen objects, artifacts, things like that, collector's pieces. Kate Bishop kind of stumbles upon this secret auction, and then as that is happening, it gets robbed. Kate then sees the Ronin suit, which was to be auctioned off at this auction. She puts the suit on, which leads to the tracksuit gang believing that she is Ronin. She fights with them and then escapes, and they chase after her, which leads into the rest of the things going on with the series. Also, note that the Ronin sword, which was being auctioned just before the Ronin suit, is stolen by Jack, Kate's soon-to-be stepfather. Through a series of events related to basically trying to escape from the robbers from the auction, Kate discovers that a murder. And so that is the second storyline that kind of goes... That's the second storyline. I would say that it's more of a secondary storyline, and I'll kind of get into it in the miscellaneous section, but those are the two things. So you have a robbery and the things that were trying to be stolen. Kate Bishop does some things, and I'll get into it here in a minute. So... And then also this murder, which she's trying to kind of solve who's the murderer throughout the series. So then on top of all of that, Hawkeye gets involved in this situation because as Kate is running away from where the Christmas party and robbery took place, she is caught on camera by a news reporter, which Hawkeye sees on the news. He realizes that someone is using the Ronin suit and may be in danger, so he decides to intervene, showing up at the end of episode 1 to help Kate escape from the tracksuit gang. Moving into characters and acting, we have Haley Steinfeld, who plays Kate Bishop. Haley Steinfeld is known for her performance in True Grit from 2010, which was really great, and she did a really good job in that. And then most recently, she was in the movie Charlie's Angels from 2019. I'm just going to tell you guys right off the bat so that we, manage your expectations here, because while the show is called Hawkeye, Clint Barton Hawkeye is not the main character. Kate Bishop, Kate Bishop is, it's not basically is the main character. Kate Bishop absolutely is the main character of the show. I want to say that she's not the most relatable character for most audience members because she has had this kind of privileged, growing up rich type of life. They don't show a whole lot of character moments that that will make most people look at her and go, oh, I can kind of see myself in her. I do want to say that the acting actually is really good. Haley Steinfeld is a great actor, and we'll kind of get into some of the things that I disliked and all of that stuff, but I do want to say her acting actually is very good. As far as her character, like I said, not very relatable. I think that she has a bad attitude, not necessarily like a total, she's not necessarily a total but she does have kind of this negative, immature attitude. The show also kind of does this thing where it tells us her skills rather than shows us, and then actually, which is bad, because then in the show there's things that happen. And due to what you've been told about the character, you kind of have this idea of how competent she is and the things that she can do. And then sometimes she does the opposite, which may be from like inexperience and things like that. But at the same time, that's why you want to show those skills, so you can kind of draw your own conclusions about people's skill levels and competence and things like that, rather than being told this person is the greatest blank, and then when they get into a situation where they have to use that skill and they mess it up, you kind of go, oh, well, that's not the best. She appears to really, actually, to tell you the truth, you have all of the, and this is a good example, is that she's told, it's basically shown to us in the beginning with the opening credit scene, and they have a kind of a montage of her doing certain things. She actually appears to really suck at fighting, where they show us that she's supposed to be good. And to tell you the truth, I don't see where she would ever be, like, she wants to be a superhero. I don't see where she would be able to survive in a lot of the situations that Hawkeye has been in, and he's kind of her idol, Some of the reasons is because, like I said, immature, she's reckless, there's an instance in the show where she actually identifies herself to someone without them asking her anything. It's just like some person she sees on the side of the road, and she says like, "Oh, I'm working with an Avenger, and I'm doing this, and I'm here to do that." And it's like, I mean, they might be trying to play it for laughs, but not everything needs to be some dumb, goofy show. So certain things, especially when it comes to like spy genre stuff, has to be able to be taken, basically pretty seriously. And I think that it just did not work where they tried to have some levity by making her character act a little bit dumb. She doesn't listen to Hawkeye. Hawkeye and her kind of team up here, as is apparent in the trailers and stuff like that. She doesn't listen to Hawkeye, and she is very arrogant. Hawkeye, and that's one of the reasons that she doesn't listen to him. He tells her like, "Oh, we have to do this, we have to do that." And she's like, "Oh, it'll be fine," and then runs in and gets herself into some situations that are, like I said, things that Hawkeye has to then come and fix. She makes stupid mistakes that I would say that probably average people would not make. Just her whole idea of herself and the situation that we're in throughout the show is just ridiculous. At one point she says to Hawkeye, "This is my mess to clean up. You should go home. You should be with your family." I'm going to tell you right now, the villain in this show, the villains, there's multiple villains. The villains in this show are like a Hawkeye, although not able to fight like Thor and Iron Man and stuff like that. This is like mid to low tier Avengers level threat, and you're a college student, and you have all of these issues that I've pointed out. You would be an idiot to think that you're going to be able to take care of this on your own, and be totally overwhelmed. Basically, imagine if you right now got involved in something accidentally, not of your own accord necessarily. Basically, because of these things that happened, you got involved in a gang war. Would you go to the police and tell them, "Oh, if they came and tried to protect you, and you said, 'Oh, I can take care of this myself'? Really? You're going to take on a whole gang or something like a criminal organization like that? No, that's stupid." Then you have Jeremy Renner, who plays Clint Barton, Hawkeye. He is best known for his movie The Hurt Locker in 2008. And he most recently did Mayor of Kingstown, a series from 2021, and it is currently going into 2022 right now. So we all know Hawkeye from the original Avengers movie and all of the Thor movie, the original Avengers movie, and all of those. Here he has hearing aids because he has had some hearing problems, and they kind of explain that, and that's fine. It's one of those things that's not that big of a deal and you can accept, but at the same time I have heard people kind of talk about why they don't think that Hawkeye should need hearing aids, and they made some great points. I think that you should definitely do some research about people's feelings about the hearing aid thing. Because at one point in the comics, Hawkeye does become deaf, but he does it intentionally. In order to be able to fight an enemy that uses sound as a weapon, Hawkeye makes himself deaf on purpose so that way he can fight that person. But anyway, so he has hearing aids. They don't really get into it a whole lot into the show, but he does have the possibility. He shows signs of a type of kind of like emotional trauma, maybe like a PTSD from losing Natasha, Black Widow. So they kind of run into that and a little bit. I think that they had a great actor and character here with Hawkeye. The biggest problem with the series is that they don't focus more on him. It's really a huge problem that Kate Bishop is the main character of the show. Like, she is the main character of the show in every sense. It's not just that Hawkeye is trying to protect her or that he's trying to teach her something. It's literally that it's even from her perspective all the time and not Hawkeye's. And it really kind of, we get a little bit of time where we see things through Hawkeye's perspective and kind of delve more into his character, but they really messed up by choosing her as the main character. And they went as far as the opening montage for the episodes is a montage of Kate Bishop shooting the arrows, shooting her bow, and doing karate and stuff like that, martial arts and stuff like that, and you don't see Hawkeye. So it's kind of ridiculous. But like I said, I do think that the acting and the character from the other movies that's been brought into the series, Hawkeye, and the acting actually is really good. So we'll get into some of my thoughts about why all of we're having problems as I go on here. Then we have Vera Farmiga, who plays Eleanor Bishop. This is Kate's mother. And she's most well known from the movie Up in the Air with George Clooney from 2009, and The Many Saints of Newark is her most recent movie, and that was released in 2021. So she's Kate's mom. You don't see a whole lot of her. She's a side character. There is some things that happen with her that are a big deal, but I mean, as far as actual on-screen time, not a whole lot. She does fine. I think that in hindsight, once certain things happen in the show and then you go back and look at the way that she was acting, you can kind of see and be like, oh, maybe that's why she was acting that way and being that way. So I think that she just did fine. No real standout because of, like I said, the screen time was limited. Then we have Tony Dalton, who plays Jack Duquesne, and he is most well known from the series Better Call Saul, which ran from 2018 to 2021. And then also a foreign movie is his most recent work, Ni Toyo ni Mia, which was released in 2020. So he is not Kate's stepdad. He is the fiance of Kate's mother. So he's not really Kate's stepdad, not yet anyway. I would say that he's a pretty goofy character. There's some suspicion around him because of him marrying Kate's mom and certain things that happen. And Kate is like suspicious of him and doesn't trust him and maybe thinks that he might be involved in some wrongdoing throughout the series. And but actually the character himself is a very goofy guy, and he seems like the kind of guy that you would go to a party and you'd want to be near him, listen to the things that he has to say, the funny story that he tells, stuff like that. He is a sword fanatic. He has a collection of swords. He knows a little bit about fencing. They kind of talk about that in the show and show some scenes with him using a sword and things like that. So it's pretty cool. The character, I do just want to say, so I loved the acting. I love this actor. I think the character does fine. He's a little bit, probably this character should have been the comic relief while all the rest of the characters were a little bit more on the serious side. Well, so I believe that it should have been that way, but instead, almost all the characters are played for a joke in some way, other than Eleanor Bishop, Kate's mom, I would say, that I've mentioned so far. All of the characters played off a little bit dumb and for a laugh. And I think that he could have been the comic relief because it fits well with the character and maybe the actor, and then everybody else should have been more serious. I do just want to say the big problem that I have with him is that the character moments between Kate, Eleanor, her mom, and Jack feel really dumb. I mean, really dumb. The way Jack talks is so stupid. He does this fatherly wisdom thing. And there's a scene where you see him talking to Kate's mom. It's like, imagine if you're sitting here, okay, so you're there, and I am your new stepdad, and I turn to your mother and I say, it's okay that he's acting this way, he or she, whatever. It's okay that they're acting this way. They, this person doesn't trust me yet, and I understand, and they feel threatened. It's like, you're sitting right there. It doesn't make any sense. It's totally dumb. Yeah, it just made me feel almost a little bit uncomfortable. I was like, who wrote this? Who wrote it? So definitely check out the writing team if you want to get a little bit more behind that. Okay, moving on to the miscellaneous section. So I always start with the good points, and then I work my way down into the bad stuff, or any critiques that I have. And so, starting with the first good point, the Hawkeye-Kate friendship/partnership. There are 6 episodes, so we don't have a huge amount of time, but I do think that the character moments that we had were done very well. There's some character development, a little bit of, like I said, a friendship, more so in the latter half of the show. But I do not think that they were done enough. I think that they definitely should have had the show focus more on that rather than some of the stuff it focuses on. Like, the whole show should have been more about Kate Bishop and Hawkeye being characters together. They could have utilized their acting talent in a better way, doing it that way too, I think. And that actually was my last good point. The rest of this is bad stuff, so let's get through it. I do have a lot to get through, so I'm going to be moving a little bit quick here, okay? So first of all, I've already kind of said, this is not Hawkeye, it's Kate Bishop. Even the opening credits are Kate Bishop montage. As you move through the first 2, I want to say, basically, this show has no hook. You're going to watch the first episode, and actually the first episode almost seems like its own self-contained story. And I'll kind of explain that here in a second with my next point. It kind of is its own self-contained story, and then at the end of episode 1, you think, oh, okay, so then what's the whole point in moving on? Like, what's the story moving forward here? And there's just nothing through the entire time of the show that made me go, man, I'm really interested to see where this is going. I even got into the third episode, and I said to my wife, and I wrote it down in my notes, I said, like, really, what is this show about? Basically, we have Hawkeye and Kate Bishop running around New York, and there's not like a unified quest. There's not like a mission that they're trying to do. There is some kind of mini side quests on the way to the main mission, which wraps up in the 6th episode, but there's not really a main mission per se. And then some of them, those little side missions they have to do get resolved even early on, and then there's no thing to go forward. Like, there's no reason to move forward anymore because we're done. So and what I mean by that, so the catalyst for the whole show is kind of contrived and ineffective. Basically, there's this auction I talked about earlier. They have this robbery, and what happens is Kate Bishop, during the robbery, puts on the Ronin suit because that was being auctioned off. So she puts it on, she starts to fight the robbers. The world does not know that Hawkeye was Ronin, so the Ronin's identity is actually a secret. Anyway, moving forward. By the end of the episode, Hawkeye intervenes, fights the tracksuit gang, who are the robbers. That's like the main resolution of the first episode. Kate Bishop and him are introduced to each other. Just prior to Hawkeye fighting off the tracksuit gang, Kate Bishop had discovered that a particular person that she knew had been murdered, and that kind of starts the story off, that kind of arc with her trying to discover the murder situation, and then also Hawkeye and the Ronin suit situation. Okay, so those are the two main arcs. From everyone's perspective, at the end of the first episode, this was just an armed robbery. Like, there is no, like, even you, the viewer, okay, it's just an armed robbery. You know, we know the tracksuit gang is the armed robbers, but really, it's just that it's an armed robbery. Hawkeye beats up the armed robbers, okay? The murder investigation, that should be for the cops, though. Like, that's not something that Tony Stark or Iron Man, Captain America, that's not something that those people would necessarily look into. It's just your run-of-the-mill murder. So there is no need for a second episode. It all gets tightly wound up in a little bow, like how it should have ended, okay? Would be like, oh, Hawkeye takes the suit, the Ronin suit, leaves, nobody knows who Kate Bishop is, she goes back to her normal life, and then the murder of this person that she saw was murdered is investigated by the police. Nothing more with Hawkeye needs to happen, and then they just move on from there, and you're like, wait, but that's goofy. I mean, there's only 6 episodes, they kind of wasted that. One thing is that it is really slow, and there's not a whole lot of action in the show. At least not enough to my taste. I'm used to Netflix shows like Daredevil when it comes to Marvel, and that show had enough character moments, but plenty of action to keep you kind of feeling the pace pretty well. There's an obvious bad guy, and if you've watched maybe the first 2 episodes, I believe that as I say that, even if you haven't watched the rest of the show, you'll know exactly who I'm talking about. And if you've watched the rest of the show, you know exactly who I'm talking about. There's an obvious bad guy that the showrunners are they're trying to like hide this and make it a mystery really hard. They try really hard to make this a mystery, but it's so obvious it doesn't work. So the show has LARPers that get involved because of the suit and Hawkeye's equipment. There's a situation where the police get their hands on this stuff. Like, it's basically there's a fire in a building, and the gear is left in there, and then the fire department comes. Hawkeye goes back to recover it and finds out that a firefighter or a police officer, doesn't specifically specify, has taken the gear, and lo and behold, that guy, I don't know how this works, but that guy actually stole the Ronin suit. Illegal! And is also a LARPer and is using it to LARP, which is live action role play, where you dress up as a fantasy character or whatever you want to dress up as, and then go pretend to battle with other people who are dressed up as fantasy characters or whatever. And so it's that. It's basically pretend sword fighting. The LARPers are depicted terribly here. This is not how LARPers actually are. This is not how nerds are. This is not how fantasy people are. It's so dumb. And the worst part about it is that, Hawkeye kind of goes to these guys, says, hey, can I, this guy has my gear, they won't let him in, so then he, without him actively participating in the LARPing event that's going on, so then they show Hawkeye with the LARPers, and he's sword fighting these guys, and the worst part is, it's all shot in slow motion, so it's really dumb. It's like really bad action. I did not like this, and it was kind of insulting to people who are interested in stuff like that. When I was a kid, I'd play with swords and stuff, and I've never done it as an adult as far as LARPing, but I can definitely see where if you really get into it, it could be pretty cool. And I would imagine that, that must really suck to have a show made like this where they make your people look really dumb. So they really wanted you to believe this mystery, to like get engrossed in the mystery for about the first 2 episodes, but it's really ineffective because of some obvious things. But then it's weird because it's like, oops, by the end of the 2nd episode, the mystery is kind of dropped and forgotten about until, they mention it like very briefly, but the mystery is actually dropped until almost the end of the show, so it's kind of dumb. One thing that was really disappointing is that they had a filler episode, which is episode 2, and they only had 6 episodes, so that's almost 20% of your show is filler. Except for maybe the first 5 minutes of episode 2 and the last 5 minutes of episode 2, or maybe 5 to 10 minutes. It's all filler. So it's not even a pushing the show forward. So you end with episode 1, like I said, being tied up in a nice little bow where you could just say like, wow, that was it. That was the whole. If they had extended episode 1 by 30 to 40 minutes, that could have been the Hawkeye movie. Okay. Because it all wraps up perfectly well. And then episode 2 comes along and doesn't push the narrative forward at all. And then we move into episode 3, and that's why I said I got to episode 3 and I was like, what is this show about? It was really not the best thing. I think that something that everybody kind of has agreed upon with the MCU is that the MCU movies are only as good as their villain. I think that's pretty much true of comic books and media and movies in general anyway. And so we've had some MCU movies where the villains are kind of copy-paste. They're not exactly, not just MCU movies, but like just MCU media has come out now where it's like the villain basically needed to be better. And I can say that the villains here needed to be better. The tracksuit gang members are all shown to be unintelligent. And not stupid like, oh, that's so dumb. No, like actually less intelligent than they should be. And it just doesn't work. They play this off as comedy, which again, as I said before when talking about the characters, I just think that this needed to be a more serious show. It needed to be a more serious show that depicted Hawkeye's skills and him being kind of a super spy to be able to work, and it just didn't. It chose not to do that, and I think that was to the detriment of the show. The comedy stuff just does not always work. Just kind of a side note as we move forward, this is a Marvel series, so you're going to have the good actors. They have some good costume design. There are some costumes that we're going to talk about, but they have the actors, they have the director and stuff like this. They have all this big budget stuff, so certain things look nice, they're shooting in nice places, but the one piece of CGI that they have here is bad, and I noticed it immediately. It's more of a side note. I don't always care about that stuff, but just mentioning it, especially because it's coming from a big production company. The putty arrow. Really bad, really dumb. Did not like this. The CGI just immediately popped right out on screen, and I was like, oh, that's no good. Hawkeye's hearing loss. So he's wearing hearing aids now. I actually am hard of hearing in this ear. I have tinnitus, which is a ringing in the ear constantly. I have a hard time when I hear multiple noises, being able to focus in on people talking. So if I'm in a little bit of a louder area, or maybe even like a fan going on in the background, and you talk to me, I have a hard time hearing. Okay? And another thing is that he only uses one hearing aid. But something happens where his hearing aid gets smashed. He has to go without the hearing aid, but he cannot hear at all without his hearing aid, which would mean that he is actually deaf. So I just want to know, why is he deaf? Is he hard of hearing? Why did you point that out? and make such a big deal about his hearing loss and then screw it up as far as attention to detail. Huge part of these shows, all of the shows, the MCU, Loki, Red Falcon and Winter Soldier, and then Hawkeye, is this problem with attention to detail, and I would put that mostly on the writing team and the production team rather than the actors, the on-screen talent. Another thing that I thought was dumb is that they make this big deal about being deaf and hard of hearing, and then the villain actually tells Hawkeye, one of the villains tells Hawkeye, oh, you might be able to do better off not using your hearing aids, because this villain, which most people have probably heard of, is actually also deaf. So the villain in this show is actually deaf, which is an interesting thing because some stuff happens that we'll talk about here in just a second in one of my other points. So as we dive into the mystery behind this murder, which again, like I said, is kind of a side plot to what's going on, we run into a company called Sloan Limited, and it is a front for illegal activity. And that's really all we know. There's some stuff attached to why it's mentioned, but it never really explains what's going on with this Sloan Limited thing. It's not explained. There's not enough of an in-depth presentation of what Sloan Limited is. It's just kind of a passing thing. And so I thought that was kind of dumb. And again, makes certain things kind of obvious because they don't go into detail about it so much. So if you're watching this, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about, but please do realize that they do. Basically, my point in telling you is that they make all these little references to certain things, and they don't flesh it out enough to make you interested in them or even really always knowing exactly what's going on. They do bring in some other comic/MCU characters. They bring in a character, and this is no spoilers, okay? But they do bring in a character that is deaf, that is the leader of the tracksuit gang, and she comes in and she does not look cool or threatening at all. I would have thought that they would have had an actress or maybe done something with her hair or makeup or something to make her look a little, or costume to make her look a little bit cooler, because she's supposed to be this big intimidating character, especially the way in which they show her. We also have another character that comes in that we've seen before that kind of takes the spotlight away from the story that we have. They literally have like half an episode to almost a full episode of just this character's things going on, and I'm looking at myself. I looked over to my wife and I said, this was supposed to be Hawkeye, and instead it's actually Kate Bishop, but then it's not even. Then they even pull away from Kate Bishop for these other characters, and it's not. I don't know. There's a lot of fat that they could have trimmed, and with the runtime of almost 300 minutes, I mean, it's like 290, so this is basically 5 hours. They could have trimmed some of the fat and then had extra stuff that we wanted to talk about. And Mike and I talked about this when we did the Matrix Resurrections review, in that these writers and these production teams need to trim fat and then use that space to put in things that people actually want to see in these stories. There was one more character, which is kind of a big deal, that they brought in, another mystery character that I won't spoil for you, but they wasted him. I actually feel like all three of these characters, at least here, one of them, the deaf one, is going to get their own show, but then the other two characters were really wasted, I think had bad motivations, and no reason for them almost to be here because of what happens with them. So there is a point where Hawkeye goes up against this deaf character, and it's funny because this deaf character told Hawkeye, hey, they make this big deal about being deaf and disability and all that stuff, and I don't necessarily think that there's there's not a problem with disabled people getting their time in the spotlight. That's not what I'm saying. But the thing is like, you have to do that respectfully, appropriately, do it in a way that you can do that in a way that's even inspirational to people, like, I don't know, like if you had a character who had only one hand, for instance, and he gets sent back into the past, but he's really smart, so he gets some medieval people to make him a fist that he can use to fight the evil dead. No, I'm just kidding. Sorry, I'm talking about Ash Williams, that's why. But you can have like disabled people like Ash Williams. He puts a chainsaw on and he's groovy, and he's really cool. Here, it's just kind of pushed so hard down your throat, almost like they really, really make a big deal about it to the point where it's more annoying, and then it has no effect on the story. So like if it had an effect on the story, then you'd be like, oh, that makes sense. Again, I'll point you to Daredevil, who is blind in Netflix's show, and him being blind has a huge effect on the story and the character. But anyway, so Hawkeye fights this deaf person, and she says to him, had said to him, you might be better off, you're better off just to be deaf rather than use the hearing aids and stuff. And it's dumb because Hawkeye defeats her men, and she doesn't know it, and she's walking around looking around what's going on. She doesn't see that all of her men are beaten because she's deaf and couldn't hear it happening. There's also a dumb resolution to that. So this deaf person is kind of the main bad guy, and there's a dumb resolution. I really did not like how the resolution went. And if you guys would like to hear more of my thoughts in depth about some of these things that I'm not spoiling for you, leave me a comment in the comment section below, okay? And I'll do a spoiler review if you'd like. I do not like the levity that they do during a lot of the combat in this show. I kind of said that before. Not everything has to be a big dumb joke. They have these jokes between opposing combatants, so I don't necessarily have a problem with, Thor and Iron Man are fighting, or Thor and Hulk are fighting, and they're, oh, I'm stronger than you, no, I'm stronger than you, and they're fighting bad guys, and then Hulk punches Thor because he's like, I'm the biggest one around. I don't have a problem with that. That makes sense. I do think it would be dumb for Thor to be fighting bad guys and then Thor to make a joke to the bad guy to then make a joke back to Thor, especially when they're no-named bad guys. And that happens. There's like one specific little story arc, like just minor speck of a story arc between one of the Tracksuit Gang members and Kate, where she's talking, basically giving him dating advice, and then they're talking, and then she like kicks him in the face, and he gets defeated, and he's trying to beat her up, and then later on they're fighting again, and he says, oh, this is what happened with that dating advice you gave me. It was really dumb, and it just didn't work, and it makes the show really campy when I really think that the show needed to be more serious. I think that Hawkeye here, first of all, Hawkeye barely ever Hawkeyes in this show. We get one solid scene of Hawkeye doing spy stuff, and you really see how competent and almost scary and powerful he is because of his tactical abilities and his spy prowess. You never see that again. He only fights with his bow twice. Once in the third episode, and then in the finale. That really sucked. I didn't like that. This is Hawkeye, who's supposed to be a bow guy, and we see him fight twice. Again, I'll refer you back to Daredevil. Go watch Daredevil. You'll see what an MCU show should be and could be, and this just isn't it. The villains are defeated in dumb ways. Some of in kind of the final battle, the villains are really defeated in really stupid ways. There's also a mystery. There's kind of a mystery that's referenced in the first episode, and then you see it again at the last episode, where the last two episodes, I want to say, where there's this mystery of this watch that Hawkeye is trying to get his hands on for certain reasons that are revealed, and I won't spoil them. It's okay. It's setting up something else, which is fine. It's setting us up for probably another character, and that's fine. It wasn't a bad point or anything, just pointing it out. You may think these shows so most of these shows are for kind of developing the characters. Like, you make a Loki show about Loki because you want to put Loki on screen and give you a little bit of more of an interesting character arc for the character. But instead, it was more about introducing the different characters, moving the MCU forward, and also replacing Loki with a female version of himself. You have Red Falcon and Winter Soldier. You did get a little bit more of a character development there in that one, so I will give it that one, even though I did think that one was disappointing. And then here, again, you think, oh, we're going to have Hawkeye, and it's just going to be Hawkeye, and we're going to get some character moments. And instead of any of that, we get Hawkeye replaced with Kate Bishop, and then a bunch of other characters being introduced to move the MCU forward in other properties, like the movies or other series. The show comes together at the grand finale, the final episode, in a sting operation that happens at a Christmas party where the Tracksuits, Hawkeye and Kate, and then all of the other villains, and also the LARPers that nobody likes. I've seen some stuff online where people are like, the LARPers were so dumb, and I totally agree. They all come together, and there's just a big blowout battle, and this is the second time in the show where you see Hawkeye actually battle with his bow. And you also see Hawkeye gets a new suit that looks absolutely terrible. It looks like he's wearing almost a costume, like a cosplay. It looks like a very cheap cosplay, or almost as if he's trying to be a ballerina in a musical or something. Or an opera, excuse me. So, yeah. The finale just kind of happens. Now I want to go over some contrivances. Okay, so I have a huge amount of these. I'm just going to rapid fire kind of through these. These are just, if you don't know, contrivances are things written into the story that make it feel cheap and unrealistic, and it breaks your immersion because they're little, maybe even details that just shouldn't be messed up. I don't want to insult your intelligence. I'm just telling you that's what contrivances are. Okay, so in episode 1, why did the bell break or fall? How did the security guard get there in less than 10 seconds? There's a Kate Bishop shoots a bell, a big bell tower with an arrow and a tennis ball attached to the end. There's no way that something that light would have hit that bell and made it break. Episode 1, how would you steal anything from the Avengers Mansion wreckage? As I said earlier, the Ronin suit being auctioned off. There's a watch. There's the Ronin sword. They're all being auctioned off at this illegal underground auction. How did they get those? Those things are protected by Stark Industries. The Avengers Mansion, the Avengers shield. Were you able to steal those? The Ronin sword is sold for $475,000. It should have been sold for millions because that's a sword that went around the world conquering how many illegal organizations, killing all these people. That sword would have been worth a lot more. In episode 1, when they go and do the robbery, the first thing that you see, there's a big explosion. The robbers come in through the wall that they blew up. They say,
"We've got 90 seconds to find the watch. Everything else is secondary."
Thank you for telling us your objective. That really kind of breaks the mystery, because while they're trying to steal some of these other things, they're trying to steal this watch, which is another very small portion of the story here. And like I said, it opens us up to another character later on in the MCU. Episode 1. No one notices the difference between Kate Bishop and Hawkeye in the Ronin suit. Kate Bishop is 5'7" and weighs 132 pounds in the show. That's the actress. Or is 5'5" and weighs 120 pounds in the comics. Hawkeye is 5'9" and weighs 181 pounds in the show, and 6'3" and weighs 230 pounds in the comics. So you tell me how a 180-pound man would be mistaken or a 132-pound woman would be mistaken for a 181-pound man. Come on now. And he's also taller, 2 inches taller. The suit wouldn't have fit exactly the same way. You can tell watching the show, you can look at it and go, oh, that just looks a little bit goofy on her. And it's supposed to, but then how come nobody else noticed it? How did Kate Bishop in the first episode get the suit on so fast? Basically this explosion, they run in, they say 90 seconds, and then the next scene you see Kate look at the Ronin suit, and then there's a real quick cut, and Kate Bishop has the suit on. How the heck did you do that? One thing is that throughout the series, Mom is never concerned about Kate. This is shown in episode 1, where they show a scene from the New York attack, involving Kate's house. Like there's an explosion, and Kate can look out from a hole in her roof and see New York being attacked. And it takes way too long for the mom to run over and see her, or for the mom to show up in the scene. It's like, where was Mom that whole time? Why didn't she run up and check on her kid? In episode 2, there's an apartment fire that I talked about when I was talking about the Ronin suit at Kate's apartment. And again, her mom never calls, never seems very concerned. She calls her mom later, and her mom is like, oh, they said there was a fire at your apartment. Then why didn't you call me to see if I was alive or dead or burned alive in a fire? Episode 6, at the grand finale here, you see Kate Bishop fighting this guy who basically I would describe as just being a giant. We're talking probably like 300 pounds of pure muscle, and he is just beating her and beating her and beating her. Again, she's 132 pounds. How did she survive this? They should have done. I think that they should have done this a little bit better. This is another one of those situations where I'd say, like, she's supposed to be this expert martial artist as shown in the opening credits, and they say it a couple of times. Then why, if she is that way, why don't you actually show us her using those skills effectively? And then also, they could have just done it with the fight a little bit differently, so that way, instead of actually being hit at all by this giant guy, she's able to dodge or something like that, so that way this doesn't happen. In episode 6, Kate and Hawkeye jump off of a roof. A very large roof. You see Hawkeye jumps into a tree, which allows him to survive. Kate just jumps off of the building. I don't remember exactly what she landed on, but I do remember watching it and saying to myself, if that had actually happened that way, they both would have just died. There's a couple of I mean, you're right, you're writers for the MCU. There are limitless opportunities or ways for you to write these things, and it's only limited by your imagination. Come on, come up with something better. And I may just be a critic who may not have been able to write something better, but if you want me to give you praise as a writer, then you've got to come up with something that I find plausible and entertaining. The Tracksuit Gang never uses guns until the plot needs them to, and even when the plot does need them to, their guns are not very effective at all. That's a thing that happens in Star Wars, except Star Wars has a way of explaining it, where they use the lightsabers to block and stuff, but like, stormtroopers can't shoot, and neither can the Tracksuit Gang, and also the Tracksuit Gang tends not to even bring their guns. Otherwise, Kate Bishop and Hawkeye would be dead. Characters disappear. So you'll see during fight scenes and action sequences, a character will literally disappear from the episode. A bunch of things will happen, and then all of a sudden, boom, they reappear and go, oh, I'm back all of a sudden. It's like, where the heck were you this whole time? Again, it's just things that, so those are the contrivances of the show. It's just things that the show does which make it feel like, who wrote this? This wasn't exactly coherent in the way that it's all going down. So, moving into my final statement and review score, when I finished watching this show, I basically turned to my wife. She said, what did you think? I said, I think that Hawkeye was a show that was written, produced, filmed, all that stuff. You press play, it starts, it has a middle, and then it ends. It's one of those things where, basically, just like in Falcon and Winter Soldier, the show ends exactly in the same place where it starts. Something happens, and then the whole character arc, and for all the characters and everything like that, has to do with getting right back to the beginning. In Falcon and Winter Soldier's case, you have Steve Rogers gives the shield to Falcon and says, "You're Captain America now," basically. And the whole show is him giving up the shield and then fighting all these people and stuff like that to then be Captain America at the end of the show. Here we have Hawkeye living his normal life. There's no Avenger threats right now. There's nothing going on. And then some stupid stuff happens that he then has to fix to be able to go back to his normal life and not have any Avengers stuff going on. We do not get enough of the great moments that I actually did enjoy. Kate Bishop and Hawkeye being friendly, interacting with each other, being characters together. It would have been cool if Hawkeye had, if there was some way that they had met each other, Hawkeye had to do some mission or something in New York, and Kate Bishop in some way is attached to that, and Hawkeye trains her, and you see most of the show being Hawkeye and Kate Bishop in action sequences training together to kind of become a team of archers and moving forward from there. You don't get enough of that for it to be interesting, so that was kind of disappointing. All in all, I'm going to give this show a rating of below average. Okay, I would say not exactly. I was extremely disappointed. I think that the MCU can really do better. We've seen the writers do some good stuff. What they really need to do is scrap all these people that are writing these things and go get the guys who did the Netflix series, like The Defenders and Daredevil, because as I've said before, most recently, and I'm going to continue to say, I believe anyway, I don't think that it was the actors. The actors all did great. I think that it was the writers and the production teams that have these ideas moving forward into detail. Like that, they'll develop an idea and go, wow, this is a good idea, let's do a Hawkeye show, which everybody was excited for. But then when they start to work out the details of the things, they just don't know how to write it effectively to make it nice and entertaining to watch, and also plausible. Attention to detail is a huge thing. It really sucks. So, that's what I've got, a below average show. I want to thank you all for watching and just say God bless you all and have a good day.